Ohio Democrats count on social issues to win in 2014.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Jim Siegel, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. Julie Carr-Smythe, State House correspondent for the Associated Press. Gene Krebs, former state legislator. And Brian Rothenberg, director of Progress Ohio.
In the early 2000s, it was Republicans who used issues like abortion and gay marriage to mobilize support. Now, Ohio Democrats are trying the same tactic. Candidate for Governor Ed Fitzgerald and other top Democrats said this week they will campaign hard against abortion restrictions put in place by Republican lawmakers and Governor John Kasich. During Kasich's term, state lawmakers have approved measures that include a ban on abortions after a fetus is viable unless the mother's life is in danger, a measure that requires women seeking an abortion to view an ultrasound and hear a fetal heartbeat. Lawmakers have pushed Planned Parenthood funding to the back of the line, all but cutting it off, and the state now bans public hospitals from signing patient transfer agreements with abortion clinics. Julie Carr-Smythe, that last restriction is being blamed for the ordered closure of a Cincinnati area abortion clinic this week.
Right. It's been described by those who think the limit is intended to effectively kind of ban the practice as sort of a catch-22, because what it says is, okay, you can operate because abortions are still legal. However, you need this transfer agreement, which any ambulatory facility in the state needs. It doesn't matter if you're doing abortions or not. But then if you're a public hospital, you can't give such an agreement to to an abortion clinic. So it's sort of a strange.
And many of the private hospitals are Catholic hospitals or religious-based, and
right.
They often, for moral reasons, won't enter into these agreements.
Right. So we've seen 4 abortion clinics close in the last year in Ohio, 2 for unrelated reasons, 2 because of fears that, or just sort of understandings that they would not be able to get such an agreement. And there may be more to come. So
this is the so-called war on women. Is that a good strategy for Democrats?
Well, in Virginia, unfortunately, they had a very radical far-right government, and they lost the attorney general's race, the governor's race. They lost, I believe, the state senate, and so I do think this is playing out across the country. But I got to tell you, it's clear right now that the Republicans are even fighting amongst themselves about who can go farther right, and women are left out of this dialogue completely.
There's a couple of things. One, Kasich is not Cuccinelli. Cuccinelli was rather, and I won't go into all the graphic details here, some of the bills he proposed and everything is just a little bit too graphic for PBS. It has had the unintended consequences, though, of, at least for now, bringing back under Kasich's fold some of the Tea Party and social conservatives who were standoffish towards him. Because of naming a lieutenant governor candidate who's on the board of a Planned Parenthood, Miami Valley, they just simply took that as a red flag in front of the bull, and it's galvanizing them. And I don't think it could have helped from a political standpoint. I think from getting out the Democrat base, it was probably a neutral to maybe 1% increase. But for Kasich, I think it was inadvertently helped him by the Democrats.
Jim Siegel, John Kasich has signed these restrictions. He's endorsed these restrictions by signing bills they were attached to. But he really hasn't been out, leading the charge. So can he be portrayed as a radical Republican?
Well, he can, in that if that's how you want to try to do it. Yes, yeah. He signed them. Yeah. Now, if the question is, did he want 5 anti-abortion provisions in his budget, so that's what he has to talk about rather than the tax cuts and the other things? I'm going to think the answer there is pretty much no. But he is pro. He says he's pro-life, and stands behind these types of things. When they come to his desk, he will sign them. And I think it seems like the Democrats, we were already hearing from them on this, is that they want to try to make this a broader topic about women's health issues, not just abortion. Now that's going to be an interesting spinning of words, because a lot of these issues they are pointing to are abortion related. But it'll be interesting to see how they can portray this to the public.
It is and it isn't.
I was just going to say that, if you look at that and this fundamental issue of the election, which will be the economy, they have some statistics in their favor in terms of women breadwinners in the state, women who are working while a lot of the men are unemployed in the state, and they probably feel they have a broader audience there that they can reach in terms of the start of what we saw in the rhetoric this week to say, women's health is an economic issue.
And average folks, these folks that are swing voters, they know this is the law. They see these games and this fighting going on all the time, and the logic of what we're doing here doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Where we're fighting over these issues over abortion, we want to solve these problems. We want unwanted pregnancies, people to carry these babies to term, but we're going to cut them off of food stamps, and we're going to create hurdles with Medicaid and Medicare, and we're going to make it harder for them to actually raise.
But the governor
child.
expanded Medicaid. And
He did, and he didn't. He also, 10,000 people this week wound up cut off of food stamps.
I think you need to divide. First of all, let's divide Republicans into two groups, broadly speaking. You have those Republicans who watch Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, or listen to them on the radio, and then you have what I call the NPR GOP, Republicans who get most of their news off of NPR. In talking to the NPR GOP, they really like what Kasich has done with, expansion of Medicaid. They view that as being a positive good. This is a swing vote a little bit on this abortion issue. The other thing is that for the first time ever, the government, the state of Ohio, is funding rape crisis centers. So as far as the war on women goes, the Democrats can make that argument, but the GOP has, I think, lots of ammunition they can put back up there against it fairly quickly. I don't see it getting, and if it was such a great strategy, it just came out with, Sharon Newhart coming on board as the lieutenant governor candidate. This wasn't there with Eric Kearney.
But aren't the rape crisis funding? Isn't that there's a loop? There's a catch there. You can't discuss abortion in the counseling.
You can't recommend an abortion. But the thing is too that they haven't overtly taken credit for it, but the more moderate Republicans are the ones who are blocking the heartbeat bill, for example, which would be the most stringent abortion restriction in the country. So there's a little bit of a sense that in Ohio there's not an appetite for that going quite that far, and who knows if Kasich is behind it, but certainly nobody wants to put it on his desk.
It's even divided the abortion opponents.
Right.
The activists, Ohio Right to Life, has been skeptical of that and whether that should go forward or not. Our next topic, in the midst of Decision 2014, there seems to be some indecision. Last month, Hamilton County Commissioner Todd Portune announced he was exploring a run for governor. It would set up a primary with Ed Fitzgerald if he ran. Portune went on a tour of the state gauging support. The crowds have been small. The Plain Dealer reports 9 people showed up at an event in Lima. So this week, Portune was set to announce something, whether he's in or whether he's out, and still, he waffled.
I have now made the final decision that I will file, so long as we can clear the last 2 hurdles, and that is to secure an appropriate candidate for the office of lieutenant governor, and then, having concluded that process, circulate the petitions necessary.
So the translation is he will run if he decides to run. Meanwhile, Ed Fitzgerald continues campaigning seemingly unfazed.
What he's finding is that to run a viable campaign, you need a long head start, and I think he's probably going to find that out. But I've just really been focusing on the governor. I haven't had a single criticism of Mr. Portune, and I don't anticipate doing that.
Jim Siegel, we are a week and a half away from the filing deadline.
Right.
What's going on here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look. Todd Portune also told the Cincinnati Enquirer, at this point I have not been able to get a lieutenant governor candidate to run with me. A little earlier, as he was doing this tour around Ohio to get a sense of his support, he admitted I've been uninvited to 3 different events and had 2 others cancel. Does this sound like a guy who's serious about running for governor? I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, I don't know of any serious gubernatorial candidate who would be saying, I can't find someone to run with me. And so, I mean, he's had a history of dipping his toe into waters before. This was thought, that I heard people talking about that from almost the moment he said that he might run. So I guess, the indecision I guess we'll let it linger on a little more, but I'm not sure there's really any going to be any story here at the end.
He says that if there was a Democratic primary, it would strengthen whoever wins and faces John Kasich.
You know, normally I think that primaries can be good. There was, even if they don't come to fruition, like with Strickland and Coleman. But I got to tell you, I mean, there's 11 million people in Ohio, and you haven't found your lieutenant governor yet. These signatures needed to gather are, you know, in the thousands. They're not in the tens of thousands. I mean, look, at this point in time, Todd's a great guy. I've met him. I've worked with him a little bit in previous jobs, but he just needs to come clean and be honest with both the press corps and Ohioans, because if that's where he's at, this isn't a campaign.
But, I mean, if you look at it, he threw a huge signal into the air had anybody wanted to replace Ed Fitzgerald, and I think that Ed has had a lot of missteps, and including Kearney as his running mate, and his timing was pretty good from that standpoint. Had anybody wanted to bail on the primary endorsed or presumably endorsed candidate of the Democrats, that would have been the moment. But clearly behind the scenes, he's being told there's no money to be had, the unions don't want to back you, and they're the big money here.
So he's trying to keep this trial balloon in the air, basically.
Right.
Up until the last minute.
Yeah. The thing is, though, is that Fitzgerald's also had difficulty in locating a proper lieutenant governor candidate. My sources inside of the Democrat structure, which are very good, say that Newhart was not his first choice. It was more like his seventh choice. And so it's a difficult thing to find, because a whole lot of people were going to have to run without cover. They're going to have to give up their current elected positions in order to run, and people were elected to do that. This whole race reminds me, and I'm one of those who believes in these macro cycles. This is the last midterm election of a lame duck president, and that is always bad news for his party. And so I look at this just like 2006, when there was, Petro versus Blackwell. We knew they were both going to lose to Ted. It just was that everybody agreed Petro would have kept the margin within 4, and Ken was going to be about 17.
I got to tell you, Gene, I mean, I love you, man, but this is a tight race. Every poll that has come out shows that the governor is not over 50% and hovering. They all show this Democratic candidate at 41 or 42, even after the Kearney situation. This is a 5-point swing, and I don't think anyone can sit here and say that this isn't a race.
Real quickly, what do you make of Mike Coleman this week? He was in D.C. really pushing hard for the GOP convention to be in Columbus, and he pushed hard for the Democratic convention, the national convention, to be here as well. But he kind of complimented John Kasich, saying he's not a dark horse for president, and he says to the Republicans, if you want to win Ohio, you got to come here. He's a Democrat, of course. I mean, he's selling the city, but
to sell the city, you need to get the Republicans to buy what you're selling, and part of that is saying, hey, look, I may be the Democratic mayor of Columbus, but, I can see where you guys have some potential. And so I think that's all part of the sales pitch. And Mike Coleman sometimes has not been friendly with everyone in the Democratic Party. He does have some moderate streak in him, too, and so I wasn't real surprised to see him come out and say.
And it's a swing city within a swing state. It's it's a consumer test market, a political purple.
And who knows what he told the Democrats? He probably told them the exact same thing. Come to Ohio, and Fitzgerald's going to win. So
it could also be a signal of pushing the Republicans hard. So you Democrats better get off the dime.
But I think the key thing it goes to is the fact that this Governor John Kasich has done, I think, a superb job of attempting to build bridges and mend fences with the African American community, black elected leadership. I mean, Jackson and Cleveland and Coleman don't really have a whole lot of negative emotional feelings.
Jackson has endorsed Fitzgerald. There are issues over voting rights. This governor has not tried to protect that community on voting rights issues.
All right, let's get to our next topic. If voters in Ohio make a decision and later regret it, they can't undo it until the next election. The Ohio Constitution does not allow for recall elections. Now, a couple of lawmakers who disagree on just about everything want to change that. Republican John Becker and Democrat Bob Hagan want to give voters a chance to kick out sitting politicians. As first reported in the Dispatch, the proposed amendment would allow voters to recall any elected politician in the state. Brian Rutherford, this really was a story back when Senate Bill 5 was being repealed. In Ohio, opponents to the bill could not kick out John Kasich. They had to go for the legislation. Where in Wisconsin, they tried to kick out Scott Walker. Which is better?
Well, I think this is actually not about either. In the way I look at this is the mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford issue, which is they could not get rid of Rob Ford even after that debacle up in Toronto. So I do think there needs to be a mechanism, but you don't want to turn all of politics into a circus either. I think the trigger has to be a high enough threshold that there has to be enough voter anger to justify it.
But then I would say choose one. Wisconsin does not have both. They have recalls. You cannot go in and have a initiative referendum on anything the General Assembly up there does. So do we want to have both? Probably not. But if we want to have a recall, then we need to do away with the voter-driven initiative, because then it will become very much the polls. We set up this system as a representational government, not a direct democracy, for those reasons, to give people more time, get things educated, and kind of cool things down, and not let mob rule.
The fact that this is bipartisan, Jim, does that make a difference?
Sometimes it does. I'm not sure it does really in this case, simply because, I mean, you're talking about one of the top 3 most liberal members of the House and one of the top 3 most conservative members of the House joining up. We're not talking about a couple of folks who are in leadership positions and are, and bring with them a large a group of folks. Yeah. So I'm not sure, but I'm not surprised either, because I know the two of them, the way they view these things. I know Bobby Hagan was trying to get this done back, I think, in 2011, and John Becker is always, if it's something that we can do to poke at government, John Becker's usually happy to oblige. So, but I don't think this goes anywhere. The Speaker has already kind of dismissed it. Yeah. So.
All right. The fallout from last week's execution continues. Witnesses say Dennis McGuire struggled, groaned, and gasped for breath for several minutes as he died from a new method of lethal injection. McGuire was executed for raping and strangling and stabbing and cutting the throat of a young pregnant woman. Because of the issues with the execution, Democrats have called for at least a moratorium on the death penalty in Ohio. Others want a complete ban. Julie Carr-Smythe, the next execution is scheduled for March. What are the chances that gets put on hold?
I think they're very high. I really do. I think whether it's a full moratorium or whether the particular legal issues that this next inmate brings in his personal suit are probably going to weigh pretty heavily on a judge's mind.
And they have taken a step back and halted them before when there's been problems with the executions.
Right, and I mean, this is just drawing attention all over the country and the world. We've seen the ACLU hop in to call for a moratorium in the last week, as well as groups in other states. And I just think that it's concerning to everybody involved that they want the process next time to go smoothly.
Richard Lott, who I think is next to be executed on the list, has now asked a federal judge, to put it on hold. I think he's arguing that the drug mix could leave a person, clinically still alive for several minutes after he is, declared dead. I'm not about to speak to the medical rationale behind that, but that's. That's the kind of things that are being debated right now, and and when you're trying to do a new mix of drugs, you're just not quite sure. What's going to be the result. The result here was messier than they'd hoped, and to me, it just goes to one of the more fascinating aspects of the death penalty, in that there's 1,000 ways to kill a person, but try to think of one that does so humanely and calmly, and it's hard to do.
Well, in the previous method, of course, none of us will ever know exactly what these people are experiencing at that time, but it paralyzed the body before the fatal drug was initiated. So at least for the viewer, say you're the family member, it wasn't as traumatic an experience.
So because we don't know if this person truly suffered, and we didn't know if the previous people had suffered, because you don't know unless they come back or it completely fails. Gene, you're from Preble County, where this murder took place, and the feelings out there, where the feelings that I heard a lot last weekend was 15 minutes, grasp for air, struggle against the restraints, so what?
Yeah, and I think this goes to both the horrific aspect of that crime he got punished for. He got caught because he was attempting to replicate that deed with a 15-year-old girl he caught walking home, from homework. Her family heard her screaming. They came out. They caught him. He tried then to invent a story to squeal on his brother-in-law. That said the brother-in-law did the original murder, but he revealed some details. This was a guy, and he wanted to kill the 15-year-old because he liked, according to the county prosecutor, he kind of liked this stuff. This was a guy who you couldn't even have him be safely out there with the other prisoners, is basically what the thing comes to. This is a guy who's very, very bad. This also represents Americans have now become separated from some of the unseemly aspects of life. We don't like death is not pretty, but very few of us now see people die, have seen a dead person, have killed things ourselves outside of deer on the highway, and it's difficult for us to get our heads around this.
So, Brian, the state Supreme Court has a task force. How much does this might weigh in their examination of the death penalty?
I think it's going to absolutely have an effect, and I think it's not a partisan issue. I think you can have, and I do have, compassion for victims, but studies are showing it's not a deterrent. Studies are showing that it's actually more expensive, the process of going through it. Now we've got this issue of how to do it and whether it's a humane way to do it. And I think you got to take a step back. Now, I happen to be personally a death penalty opponent and would like to see it done away with completely, but I think regardless of where you're at after this, I think there's going to be a long pause.
Our last topic. One of John Kasich's goals as governor was to get local governments to share services, even consolidate. Of course, the goal is to save money. The governor's first budget made cuts to local government accounts, and as reported by the Dispatch, a top Kasich aide is trying to convince cities, counties, villages, townships, school districts to do things differently. Opponents say local control is best. Gene Krebs, this is one of your causes. Right. It makes sense. Why doesn't it happen?
I think that the Kasich administration, you're going to hear me say something unkind for a moment. Oh, my. They made a mistake when they cut the local government fund in that they assumed that everybody was going to behave, local government officials were all going to behave rationally and go, oh my gosh, we just had our funding cut. Let's go ahead and see what we can do to share services, collaborate, consolidate, and be innovative. Instead, everybody kind of hunkered down, rope-a-dope, yelled, oh, we don't like this.
Went for levies.
Went for levies. In response to that, there's two levels of response. One, it was created a local government innovation fund, which is actually going to pay local governments to innovate. And the 30th floor raised some objections that they said, so you're going to pay them to do something they should be doing already?
So would a carrot, the stick didn't work, Gene says, would a carrot help governments consolidate? All the townships are the ones that I just can't figure out, why they
I don't think so. And it's cultural. I mean, a lot of this is cultural. For instance, the fire departments and the myriad of fire departments started as volunteer fire departments, and they were a way of life. And then towns got bigger, and they became regular fire departments. I really think that on paper, what Gene has spent a lot of time studying and what a lot of folks in different gubernatorial offices, Republican and Democrat, have tried to do is figure this out. But I think it's a cultural problem.
And I think
And it's not only Ohio. I mean, every state where I've ever worked, I mean, the layers and layers of local government are very high.
There's good news, though. Worthington Republican Mike Duffy, representative, has introduced legislation along with some other folks that would establish a database so that you could be informed and you could look at how much your local government costs compared to the other ones in very discrete categories. I think that will change the dynamic.
Do we have to have like a new Rome where you have a scandal over what basically was a speed trap on the west side of Columbus? Is that the only way? It's going to take something catastrophic to get these things to go away.
It's going to take it's going to take a change in state law. I mean, we can talk about trying to incentivize innovation, and I think there is some, at some levels, some innovation, some sharing going on. But if you really want to make wholesale changes, if you really want to reduce the number of townships from 1,300 down to something, around 500, it's going to take changes at the State House, and the governor's going to have to put a lot of capital on the line to do things like that. I mean, it's like Brian said, it's culture, it's territorial. Everyone is protective of their own space and their own area. So it's I mean, I've seen you've seen, Gene, you've seen commissions formed to try to put recommendations together. It just doesn't.
We got to get to our off the record comments and our final parting shots, predictions for the week, and we'll start with Brian Rothenberg.
I think we're going to see redistricting rear its head again, and I think we might actually get someplace in March of this year.
Interesting. Gene?
Go Broncos. I love it when the older, high-priced guy gets cut by the team, and then he goes to a different team, and he helps them go on and get to the Super Bowl. Personally, I love that story.
Peyton Manning, of course, is what you're talking about. All right. Julie?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Todd Portune will eventually leave the race.
Brave. Eventually. February 5th is the federal filing deadline.
Julie kind of stole mine. I was going to predict that no matter what he decided to do, Todd Portune was not going to be a factor in this election.
All right. My final comment, the best headline of the day came from a satirical sports site. The Sports Pickle said, "New Cleveland Browns coach asks for privacy during this difficult time." Maybe he can get Peyton Manning after he's done with the Broncos, Gene. That's the Sports Pickle. Check it out. It's pretty funny. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. We're on Facebook and Twitter. And you can get streaming video at our website at WOSU.org. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.